welcome back. This is Wayne Madsen with the Wayne Madsen Report, the Saturday Roundup. And if you'd like to call into the program, the toll-free number is 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. I was talking about this documentary, Inside Job. I highly recommend it, but I didn't understand what collateralized debt obligations were and credit default swaps. Remember back with the S&L collapse during the Reagan administration and old man Bush 41, we had junk bonds. See, all they do is they change the names of these things. Now there's hedge funds. It's all part of the same alchemy, all part of this huge conspiratorial Ponzi scheme to not only bankrupt people, and we know many people have been bankrupted, companies have been bankrupted, now entire nations are being bankrupted. Inside Job starts out with what happened in Iceland in 2008, where the three banks overextended themselves. They totally deregulated business in Iceland. Everyone was on the take. The regulators were on the take. The parliament was on the take. The government was on the take. And now Iceland has been bankrupted. Essentially, what was a high standard of living country, you've got people with no money being forced from their homes. And now that has spread to countries like Greece. Of course, the Greeks are not putting up with it. France, where the government is saying now you can't retire at 60. You got to wait another 2 years. People who are getting ready to retire have been screwed. At least the French got out in the streets and rioted. Nevertheless, the pension reform went through. It doesn't matter whether there were 2 million people on strike and in the streets. It doesn't matter to these criminals, the IMF and the World Bank and the European Union and all these people that are involved in this huge ripoff. Now it's Spain, it's Portugal, it's eventually Ireland. They're all going to face this, and it's eventually going to hit the United Kingdom and the United States, because there's already rumors of a potential bank holiday in this country, just like we had after the Great Depression, after the collapse of Wall Street in 1929. And when you go back to your bank, you're going to find out that your dollar isn't worth as much as it was before the bank holiday. Is this what Obama's going to the G20 summit to discuss in Seoul? I mean, he's out of the country for 10 days. He's never been out of this country longer. He just basically saw the demolition of his own political party in the House of Representatives and almost in the Senate. And he's off praising outsourcing jobs to India, in India. So what do we have with Obama? We have nothing different than we had with George W. Bush. Bush was a tool of the fat cats, the corporations. Obama is too. His attorney general's done nothing to bring criminal charges against any of these criminals on Wall Street. His entire economic team, most of them are out of Goldman Sachs, the chief perpetrator of this huge financial conspiracy. So now we see entire nation states being bankrupt. I got to say one thing. Cleverly, George Soros appears in this documentary acting like, oh, he's one of the critics. He's part of the problem. His quantum fund, his hedge fund, and Soros fronts for the Rothschild family. Everybody knows that. Soros is trying to play it like, I'm one of the good guys here. No, he's not. He's one of the bad guys. But he's the artful dodger in all these things. He tries to play the other side. George Soros is to the left what Rupert Murdoch is to the right. They both know what they're doing. They're both using both false ends of the political spectrum to maximize profits for themselves and for their fat cat friends in Wall Street. And in the process, of course, they're actively involved in censoring the news. Soros from the left with these phony websites, like he helps with, like the Huffington Post and all these so-called do-gooder organizations, these nonprofits, and Murdoch, of course, with his Fox News and his Wall Street Journal. Let me just say, Wall Street Journal the other day has an article. What's all the fuss about credit default swaps? Well, I'll tell you what the fuss is. credit default swaps are part and parcel of this casino, this Wall Street casino. And of course the Wall Street Journal is going to say what's all the fuss about, because they did not cover this, because those editors and those reporters for the Wall Street Journal owe their very existence to the fraud that was perpetrated by Wall Street. That's why they don't see a problem with any of this. They're part of the problem. So anyone that reads Barron's or the Wall Street Journal or Fortune magazine or Forbes, you're reading Wall Street propaganda. You're not going to find any answers in any of those publications, because they're all controlled by Wall Street. The rating agencies, the Moody's, the Fitches, they were all part of this. They gave these toxic contrivances AAA ratings, when in fact they were junk. They're part of the problem. This thing is so endemic. The academics, the people in the Wharton School and Columbia Business School, also part of the problem. They're paid by the same companies, the same Wall Street companies, to come out with these glowing reports about this illegal activity. So it's a major conspiracy. There's probably not enough jails to house all these people, but I would hope we would start building more jails. Let the small time pot guy, the guy that was caught selling pot, or the small time criminal, let them out. They can be rehabilitated, but the people on Wall Street cannot be rehabilitated. They need to take their place in the prisons around this country. And if we run out of room, maybe we can talk to some of our friends who had these rendition black sites, these jails in Morocco and Syria, and put our overflow criminals in those jails. To take the worst of them and put them over there. Let them torture them. Let them be waterboarded. Let them have electrodes put on their genitals. Even with all that, it's too good for these people. Believe me, it's too good for these people, for what they've done to this country in bankrupting it. And it's just amazing that we put up with this nonsense, and we've got this false dichotomy. Oh, the Democrats are out, the Republicans. It doesn't matter. Both political parties and the libertarians are all funded by the same corporate fat cats. They're all doing their bidding. And it's what's the solution? The solution is not the system. The system is part of the problem. They own the courts. They own the judges. They own the prosecutors. They own right down to the district attorneys. And those who might, raise Cain about this, well, they're defeated. We saw many people, many states' attorneys general who were going after these fat cats lose in the last election, and they've been replaced by those who are going to carry the water for the big corporate fat cats that pulled off this huge, tremendous ripoff in this country. I want to also now play a clip. This is Senator Levin. You're not going to – this is when he called the Goldman Sachs people last April before his committee. You're not going to hear one Republican ask these kinds of questions to anybody on Wall Street. Levin's just quoting their internal email documents, so it's a little bit of coarse language. But listen to what Levin said, and just figure that any Republican chairman of any of these committees is going to ask these kinds of questions to the people from Goldman Sachs.
$600 million of Timberwolf securities is what you sold. Before you sold them, this is what your sales team were telling to each other. Got it? 105?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Look what your sales team was saying about Timberwolf. Boy, that Timberwolf was one shitty deal. They sold that
Mr. Chairman,
deal.
This email was from the head of the division, not the sales force.
Whatever it was, it's an internal Goldman document.
This was an email to me in late June.
Right. And you sold Timberwolf.
Transaction.
No. You sold Timberwolf after as well.
We did trades after that.
Yeah. Okay. And the trades after.
Some context.
Yeah.
Might be helpful.
The context, let me tell you, the context is mighty clear. June 22 is the date of this email. Boy, that Timberwolf was one shitty deal. How much of that shitty deal did you sell to your clients after June 22, 2007?
Mr. Chairman, I don't know the answer to that, but the price would have reflected levels that they wanted to invest in.
Oh, of course. But they don't know what it says. You didn't tell them you thought it was a shitty deal.
Well, I didn't say that.
No. Who did? Your people, internally. You knew it was a shitty deal, and that's what your email showed.
I think the context, the message that I took from the email from Mr. Montag was that my performance on that deal wasn't good. And I think the fact that we had lost money related to that wasn't good.
How about the fact that you sold hundreds of millions of that deal after your people knew it was a shitty deal? Does that bother you at all? You sold to customers something?
I don't recall selling hundreds of millions of that deal after that.
All right, let's take a look. Exhibit 166, series of emails. The first is June 26, 07. That's after June 22. July 1, 2007, tells the sales force the top priority is Timberwolf. Your top priority to sell is that shitty deal.
Mr. My comment was I didn't recall the sales. That
you got it?
That we're trying to sell.
Okay, you're trying to sell a shitty deal, and it's your top priority. Come on, Mr. Sparks.
Well, Mr.
Should Goldman Sachs be trying to sell, and by the way, it sold it, a lot of it, after that date. Should Goldman Sachs be trying to sell a shitty deal?
Well,
can you answer that one? Can you answer that one, yes or no?
There are prices in the market that people want to invest in things. I didn't use that term with respect to this deal.
No, well, you can hear you can hear these guys. They go on and on. I don't recall. That's because they're overly lawyered up. That's his pat answer before these committee hearings. This is Jesse Ventura and his new. He's got a conspiracy show out now about the Wall Street criminal conspiracy. Let's find out who Goldman Sachs consists of. This is Jesse Ventura. He'll tell you who Goldman Sachs is.
Got a list here. Mark Patterson, Hank Paulson, Ed Liddy, William Dudley, the two previous heads of the Federal Reserve, the head of the New York Stock Exchange, the head of the World Bank, and the heads of the Canadian and Italian National Bank. All these people have one thing in common. They all work for Goldman Sachs. Now, gentlemen, come on. You're going to sit here and look me in the eye and tell me there's not a conspiracy or at least a conflict of interest going on here?
Well, if you're going to have
there you have it. That's who Goldman Sachs is, and who are their buddies? People like Larry Summers, all these people that are advising Obama. They also advise George W. Bush. I'll tell you what needs to happen to Goldman Sachs. And the libertarians aren't going to like it. Ron Paul's not going to like it. Rand Paul's not going to like it. The Republican teabaggers aren't going to like it. Goldman Sachs needs to be nationalized immediately. Their assets have to be distributed into the into the general fund of the U.S. Treasury. And any investor, barring pension funds, they're the ones that need to be reimbursed. The small-time investors need to be reimbursed. But every single fat cat that has money invested in Goldman Sachs needs to lose their ass on Goldman Sachs. Goldman Sachs needs to be nationalized. It needs to be taken over, and its assets have to be sold off, and the proceeds need to go into the general fund of the U.S. Treasury to help reduce our national debt. Rand Paul and Ron Paul don't like that, but that's what has got to happen. Obama's not going to do it because he's controlled by Goldman Sachs. He's got Robert Rubin. He's got all these people, Hank Paulson, all these people that are in bed with Goldman Sachs in his administration, but that's what's got to happen. And if that sounds communist, it is. Well, so be it. It's communist. That's a throwaway line anyway. It's socialist. Okay. People that say Obama's a socialist, what socialist in their right mind would bail out Wall Street, let all these guys off the hook, these criminals, and then give them bonus packages so they can keep their yachts and their big mansions and their summer vacation homes and the private airplanes and everything else? That's not socialist. That's Wall Street corporate fascism, and that's what's got to end in this country, and it's got to end soon. And the sooner the better. And you're not going to get it from these Tea Party guys and these Rand Pauls and these Ron Pauls and all these people who think these guys have the answer when they don't even recognize the fact that the Federal Reserve is made up of banking corporations. It's not a federal agency. If they can't understand that simple fact of life, then they're not going to understand anything about what's going on in this country. So be careful what you wish for. People voted these people in. Now, I've spoken to some Republicans say, and 2 years they're going to be voted right back out if they don't do anything to help fix the system. Believe me, they're not, because they're controlled by Wall Street. Wall Street gave them the money. It takes a lot of money to run for Congress, especially a successful campaign means that they have been bought and paid for many times over. All these incoming Republicans in the House and the ones in the Senate, you're not going to get anybody holding Wall Street accountable. Believe me, it's not going to happen. We're just going to see a continuation of this kabuki theater between the Republicans and the Democrats, between Obama and Speaker Boehner, and that's what we're going to be subjected to for the next 2 years. And it's not going to be anything serious about it. It's just going to be to provide fodder for the 24/7 propaganda news channels, because their only intent is to keep you entertained with fake news. And that's all it is. They don't do news anymore. There's no real journalists left in any of those operations. 60 Minutes, where was 60 Minutes in covering this Wall Street conspiracy? 60 Minutes is owned by a major corporation. You're not going to see it. You're just not going to see it. But anyway, let's go to Maggie, who's calling in from Arizona.
I'd like to get your opinion on the fact that the Secretary of the Treasury of Puerto Rico was appointed receiver over the bankrupt United States and the reorganization plan in 1950.
Give me that one again.
Well, you know, the United States was actually incorporated and is considered a foreign corporation. And the Secretary of the Treasury of Puerto Rico was appointed receiver over the United States in a reorganization plan.
Okay. Maggie, we've got a short break, but I want to get to your question right after the break. If you'll hold on, this is Wayne Madsen. We'll be right back after this short break.